What's up, guys? Welcome to YouTube and welcome back to the show. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our newest partner on the Pit to Pro podcast. We've decided to partner up with the Athlete Wellness Academy to deliver you guys the best in arm swing training. With their new Arm Swing Academy, you will receive video analysis, a ton of feedback, on-court drills, and individualized workouts. AWA has worked extensively with the three of us at the Pit to Pro podcast, as well as the top university programs across the country. If that sounds like something you want to be a part of, click the link in the description of this video or our Instagram bio and get $10 off every month of your subscription. The Arm Swing Academy offers a 7-day free trial, which you can cancel at any time. And if you're not seeing progress after 1 month of joining the Academy, you'll be refunded. It's completely risk-free. So click the link in the description of this video or our Instagram bio and start your 7-day free trial today. Other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Your name has come up probably 3 or 4 times on our podcast with different guests. And they often talked about it's good things, good things. And they talked about your instinct for the game, especially on the block defense side, and your understanding of offenses. How do you put your instinct into words? Like, how, as a coach now, how are you trying to facilitate your action or your thoughts through their actions?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not easy. I think the biggest thing to do is to promote thinking, like to actually just ask questions to guys what they're doing. Um, and I've gone through different I've been coaching for what, 3 months or something. Um, but I've gone through kind of different stages and realized certain things along the way. Like, because at first I was telling them like everything, every action I saw, a mistake or a decision that I thought was different, not wrong, but just I could have done something else. I was like very, hey, like, did you think about this or do this, blah 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 blah. But now it's much more in the idea to make them think about it, to create that autonomy. Because it's I could give guys answers about where to block or what to do or what options to take, and then without me saying it, like, it just won't happen. But promoting guys to think about the game, and like that's all aspects of it, will then hopefully increase their curiosity, and then like it's theirs. Like it's so much more powerful for them to find answers to questions they have than for me to just give them the answer.
How do
There's
you
way more retention, I think, in that case too.
Yeah, for sure. How do you
Not just
promote that curiosity?
Yeah, I don't know. We watched some video last week. I showed them some clips of Blair Band's team in Korea. He sent me like a bunch of clips of practice and things like that. So just like exposing the guys to a different level and different like type of volleyball. Because Canadians, like, they know volleyball is bump, set, spike, bump, set, spike. They don't know it as, direct cover to an outside, who's then has an option to spike or set the middle. There's like a lot of creativity that people don't know about. So I think first you got to expose them to it, and then you have to show them that it works. So like, okay, all this creative stuff is fun and cool, but if it doesn't work to like increase your efficiency, then no one's going to want to do it.
Right.
So it's got to be both. You got to show that it works. And it's fun. Like, at least for me as an athlete, like when I was doing new things, it was always fun, like to try to learn them. If that was like a hybrid or back setting or whatever, something new, it's just like refreshes your love for the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. And probably increases skill in other areas that you're not even working on. Just again, going back to like the touch quality, every touch probably helps your other skills, I think. Just reading the
Yeah.
ball and contacts and that kind of stuff. And I like what you said too about like with your blockers, you could tell them every time what to do with their mistakes, all that. And I felt that as a setter at Trinity, because we're pretty not strict, but we have a system that everyone goes through, everyone learns, and that's
Yep.
kind of how it's done. And at the beginning, I wasn't even thinking what, like, I wasn't using my own brain. I was trying to think what Ben would want me to do. not
Yeah, like
anything.
what are the rules?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it was just like this weird pressure. I was like once removed from the decision. But then once I just took ownership, did what I wanted to do, then you can discuss with your coach after about your decisions, not
Yeah.
whatever, that weird dynamic.
Totally. Yeah, some things like that. We play some small like mini games where there are rules, but then I want to see guys be creative and like try to win the drill. That's kind of a big one for me to get guys to start thinking rather than just, passing the ball here. Is there another way to win this drill? Um, to be creative in tactics or what you're using, what kind of skill you're using too.
Hmm. That's cool. Have you always been, as a player, have you always been that cognitively focused?
Um, yeah, I think so. I think at times I was like too focused on certain things or like couldn't let it go. So after practice or after games, I would think about certain actions. And now like I have a terrible short-term memory of matches and actions, which is awesome. I think that's where you want to be, where you're like super analytical about what's happening in the moment, and then when it's done, it's just like it's fully over.
Mhm.
Having kids definitely helps that.
We've heard that a
Yeah.
couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I told the guys on my team, like, don't go and have kids, but it just does put things in perspective that there's more out there to life than just volleyball.
Hmm.
Well, I was just curious, but like before 3 months ago, were you watching much U Sports volleyball? Like none?
No,
Like
no.
how has that change come in where it's like you were majority watching only pro and now it's like, okay, now I have to watch U Sports.
Like, I mean, the athleticism is similar, but like the variance in skill is large.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, skill in general is kind of a long-term thing, but it's like so important. Like lots of our training is trying to just create more skill in all positions, which Canadians seem to lack, especially others like certain positions. You can get by in U Sport, you can get by in Canada with being super athletic and not skilled in certain positions, but doesn't really fly at the next level, like at the highest level. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's interesting trying to improve that and having guys do stuff like they've never done. That's a big thing for us.
Right.
So like pushing guys out of their comfort zone to try to jump set or try to like back set or you know
Yeah.
set like with their forearms with speed or there's tons of stuff that they just never have done. So like they're terrible at it. Um, and I think getting better at things like even if you won't do it in a game just makes you better at that skill. Like gets you more coordinated, has a
Right.
better touch on the ball, things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Rather than just like repping out high balls for middles that are only ever set high balls. Like setting 1,000 high balls for me is not as valuable as setting half as many and then doing half as many like fun stuff where they'll never actually do it in a game, but just
Mhm.
creates better feel.
Yeah. What seems like all the players in Canada, at least, that really accelerate is like they've been playing since they were a kid and just like messing around with the ball and not playing volleyball, but just like touching it and learning how to control it and that kind of stuff. And so like you kind of got to play catch up sometimes, I guess, with some guys who didn't have that.
Man,
Yeah.
I remember Rod Walsh always saying that like whatever we were doing on court was great, but the like the building of the skill came from when we were playing like basement pepper or like a weird rendition of like let's hit the ball over this mattress and see if we can control it under the like I think those
That
games are important as
that's
heck.
how Canadians get those skill like that skill work, which is not the right way in my opinion. But like that's the way that you got better at doing certain skills because you guys
Yeah.
were playing in the backyard or in the basement. Doesn't have to be that way. Like it can be there's stuff you can do on court to increase that skill. I don't know if you
Mhm.
guys have seen like the French league for like kids. They've got like a 2-on-2 league.
Yeah.
Um, and they're like pancaking and throwing and push tipping, and
Hmm.
they're like skilled, and I don't know how old they're, like 12-year-old kids.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, I
yeah,
forget where I heard this, but someone said they let them play real volleyball earlier, even if it is 2-on-2. They're like competing and doing all the skills and stuff. Whereas here, it's like they're not ready for that yet. They're not ready for
right.
push tipping. They're not ready for pancaking. They're not ready for overhand serving. But they just like let them go right out of the gates, and then they get good at it.
And then you're 22 and you can't do some basic skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure
Yeah.
happens here. Pro, there's just like a much wider range. So you've got guys that are, 16, 17 on the team, and then you've got 40-year-olds. That was the case in Spain. Like we had a 16-year-old and I think 41-year-old guy. Um, but no, it's not strange coming back to this level. It goes back to the same thing. Like there's a lot of variation in in actions. So it's, at that high level in pro, it's just everyone is a bit more skilled, not more physical, but just better touch on the ball, better kind of vision, and kind of court sense is kind of huge. Like just knowing what's going to happen. So guys in pro are simple. Like I always talk to our guys about being simple in like every action. um, so you'll watch guys in pro that go like directly to the ball, or they only move their arms to the ball. But here, there's a lot of like extra stuff going on. So, and that's like U sport in general. There's a lot of wasted movement.
Is a lot of what you're teaching that's not to the middles based on what you have observed? Or like how are you going about teaching setting or defense, for example?
Yeah, lots of it. I mean, I was a really good defender, so that kind of comes easy. Um, Lots of it comes from like hearing what coaches have said to those positions over the years. So like I was always trying to listen in to the coaches I had when they were talking other positions. Um, Not because I thought I was going to be a coach someday, but just I think it's just helpful to hear what coaches have to say to other positions, even if you're a middle or different position. So yeah, I was always kind of just floating around when I heard coaches talking to other positions, but yeah, a lot of it is about observing and now trying to watch skills and like break it down a little bit more, or a lot
Hmm.
more. Like I've never watched certain things with some skills, and that's like half my job is to try to break it down and understand how the best guys in the world do it, but then also the best way to teach it, or a way to teach it. I don't think
Hmm.
there is a best way to teach anything, but it yeah, it definitely takes time to understand all the different skills. We wrote down on the board yesterday in the whiteboard just like a pyramid about what makes a good spin server. And it's like the whiteboard just kept getting bigger and bigger. It's a complex thing. It's not an easy thing to teach, that's for sure.
Well, I wanna ask about like recruiting because you've never done that
No.
ever. How are you finding that, or what kind of like not you don't have to give us your strategies, but like what's your thought process on that?
Um, yeah, recruiting is tough. Like it's a huge part of the job. And it's funny, like I went to nationals right when I got home from Spain, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was just watching everybody in the gym. Oh, this guy's good. Like write down his number and his team, and then like had a list of guys I liked. And then I talked to other coaches, like Adam's a big one. I was like, "Hey, have you seen this guy?" He's like, "Yeah, he's signed. He's going to this school." And I was like, "Okay, how about this one?" "Yeah, he's signed. He's going to this school." It's like, okay, I'm watching the wrong age here. But then back down to like 17U, 16U, it's pretty shocking how early these guys are being talked to from coaches.
Hmm.
Um, like the top kids are having conversations in grade 10 and 11, which was never the case when I was coming through. But yeah, trying to understand the level and who the guys are at a young age. But then that's also hard. Like, how do you recruit, or how do you tell a kid that's 16 is going to be good when he's 18, 19? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I changed a ton in high school from grade 10 to 12.
Yeah.
And some guys change poorly, like if they grow or they become athletic or however that works. But it recruiting is super important, and it is a big work in progress, that's for sure. And
That's in a
a
match.
big part of it, which I wasn't thinking at the start, was like seeing if the guys are the right fit for our team as well, or like the culture that we're trying to change. Rather than just, this guy's good at volleyball, so let's bring him on a trip. Then it's like, okay, does this guy have the right attitude, and does this guy work with what we're trying to build? So big part of the trips that we've had with guys is trying to understand, it is for them and to see if they like us and what we're doing, but also the other way around.
What are your favorite kind of players to coach?
Ask me that in a couple years.
Okay. What are your favorite kind of players to play with?
Um, yeah, like super high energy guys, I think that were like really resilient. I think those were the guys that I always gained a lot of trust from, or like I had a lot of trust in, and not just high energy, but just like aggressive. Um, but then if stuff was going poorly, like it didn't look like it, the way they acted and the way they played the game.
From every guy that I know that has played with you, they're amazed at your leadership and that resilience. Every guy that I've talked to,
Wow,
every guy I've talked to.
there you go.
Which is like one person.
Yeah, I've talked to 3 guys. Yeah. They all loved you. But I'm curious. I think most leaders are likely natural leaders, but what are some conscious things you did as a player to benefit the team outside of skill?
I think I would often like check in with certain guys outside of practice. So like if that was before or after, just like to see how things are going. Um, but a big part of that is just like having conversations. So it's not just like, hey, how are you doing? It's like just talking about what you're doing outside of the game or how your family's doing, or try to get to know each other a little bit. I think that's a big part of kind of gaining trust and building a team, is like really getting to know each other on a better level. Um, so that would be something I think I kind of did on purpose. I was interested, like, all the guys I played with were friends, so I was interested in it, but I knew the value in it when I did it. So that would probably be a big one.
Hmm, cool. And then what about, you said you love playing with guys who are resilient and you can't tell how the game is going based on their demeanor and their attitude and their effort and all of that. I think you were a guy like that. How do you develop that when those thoughts start coming through your mind and you're just having a terrible game? How do you stay with it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really good question because it's gonna go poorly. Like you're always gonna have bad games. Um, for me, lots of athletes will like make a bigger story of it. So like if I miss my serve, and I kind of go through like what's the worst case scenario. So like if guys are nervous to serve or play a certain point, like what's the worst thing that could happen is like you lose the point. Okay, you lost a set because of it, and you lost a match. And like, okay, the very worst thing is like you miss your serve and you lose a national championship or you lose in playoffs. And then like, what's the next step? Like, what does that affect in your life? So once you understand like it doesn't do anything to you in like your future, for me, that's kind of like freeing. Um, so that was kind of stuff I would tell myself sometimes. Um, at a certain point in my career, I actually told myself like at the service line, and this was like when I was trying to hybrid and learning how, I would just say like it doesn't matter if I miss for that reason, like it, and like connecting the dots that it doesn't matter because okay, the worst thing that could happen is we lose a volleyball game. Um, once I understood that, it really like freed me up to not worry about results as much.
That's
I
cool.
really like
Yeah,
that.
that's really
Yeah.
cool.
I think there's interesting. What do you call it? A dichotomy when there's two different opposing things? Of like,
Sounds good. Sounds
yeah,
good.
okay. Because I think like the freedom that you gain from the it doesn't matter mindset is amazing, but then you also need to maintain the I really care and really want to win side.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible to do both, but I just think it's an interesting kind of dynamic to play. Like I always thought of it as in a match when I was playing my best, I was constantly like zooming out and zooming in. Like when I was in those high pressure moments at the back serving, I'd zoom out, notice where I am, notice that I'm just in a volleyball game, that this is sick, this is where I want to be, and then zoom right back in and put everything I've got into like all my focus into one serve or one action, one play.
Yeah. And that's that's like super important when I tell guys like it doesn't matter. It like it's the only thing that matters until it's done. And then it doesn't matter at all. That's kind of the for how I look at it.
Yeah.
Because when I play, like if you can get to that point where you're fully focused and it's the only thing your brain is going through for 2 hours, like that's where you want to get to. And it's the only thing you're thinking or caring about. And then as soon as the point is done or the match is done, then like you have no effect on it and it really doesn't affect your life. So
Really
very
cool.
easy to say, very easy to say,
Yeah.
not hard to get to. And like
Yeah.
not saying I was perfect at that. Like
Yeah.
there's no way.
Is that I
Did
think that almost has to be a self-discovery process.
Yeah, I mean, like I just said, it's very easy to say that to somebody. For them to fully get it or like start to grasp it, how I don't know how to say it yet to like really get it to be understood. So I would say yes.
Yeah.
But I think you
did you
can, for a coach, it's interesting because the way that you respond to certain things really rubs off on players. So like if I'm freaking out after a game because we lost and I'm expecting my team not to, like that's not going to happen. So it is kind of top down from that side of things. If a guy misses a serve and I show frustration or I throw my arms up or I do an eye roll or whatever, you've had coaches that do all these kind of things. Like that doesn't help him understand that it doesn't matter.
through a lot of that self-discovery that you've had, did you do a lot of journaling? Like I was actually going to ask this question earlier when you were saying you went through 3 phases in the last 3 months. Like how is that just through trial and error, or do you keep a log, or how do you I don't know. I'm curious how you function that way.
Yeah. And I didn't go through 3 phases, just I went through a few different phases of like teaching and telling everything and then realizing, okay, that's not the way to do it. And it's like it's always going to be growing.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah, I guess my question is how did you realize? Like how did you come to that realization?
yeah, it's not through journaling. Like I wish I could be a guy that ends practice or ends the day and writes down my thoughts and things. I've tried to do that. I've tried to get into a habit of that. Never really did. Um, but I think I'm pretty mindful about how things are going. So I will reflect and like take some time to think about, um, is this the right way to do things? And I don't have any biases on that, which is good, I think, because I'll just ask myself about everything. Like, is this the right way to do spike warm up? Is this the right way to play pepper? Um, a lot of people just take it as, the way to do certain things. I don't think that that's healthy. Um, so like I'm always questioning things that we're doing or things that I'm doing and saying. Um, not that I'm not confident in what I'm saying, but just like, there's always going to be a better way to say or do
Hmm.
things. Like there's nobody's got a code for that.
Besides journaling, what are some of the big habits that you had as a player that you think led to such a long and successful career?
Um, this isn't really a habit. I think the one thing is just like I just love the game. So like I just really enjoyed playing volleyball. Um, for as long as I did. Like I played think 9 or 10 pro seasons, and none of those were like not fun. Like I had fun every season. There were times in every season which I did not have fun. But in general, like playing a sport or a game for a living is pretty special, and I just love the game. Like it's just like a huge love for the sport really just kept me going and kept me motivated to keep improving. That desire to keep getting better, even when like possibly you're not getting better, for me is huge to stay focused. So like even if you're getting older, you're not jumping as high or you're not serving as hard or spiking as hard. The attitude of like trying to improve for me was always super important. When I didn't like volleyball, it was times where I felt like I wasn't getting better or I wasn't like in the process of trying to get better, not necessarily actually getting better. But are the things I'm doing, like, is there a reason for this? Is this, am I doing this to get better at volleyball, or am I just doing this because it's like what we're supposed to do today?
Yeah, there's a cool quote that's having things isn't fun, getting things is fun. And I think it's more of like a career thing. Like, when you get a pay raise, that's amazing, but then you just get used to that level. Whatever, you buy a nice car and it's super fun, but once you have it, it's not amazing. And I think it's the same thing with volleyball, like getting better and trying to get better and being in the process and feeling the improvement and moving to a better team, all that kind of stuff, doing a skill that you couldn't do yesterday. That's the fun part, I think. Whereas
Yeah.
when you find a level and you just accept that's my level and you try to maintain, I feel like the sport loses its kind of thrill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in an attempt to maintain, like I don't think you do, but in an attempt to like try to keep improving, that's often when you actually will maintain your level and your volleyball. Doesn't mean that you're always going to be improving, because that part, if you connect to like trying to improve and improving. So you talked about, it's fun getting to a better team or playing better or getting to that point. If you connect your process to that stuff doesn't always happen. Like you're not always going to go to a better team. You're not always going to play better matches. You're not always going to spike harder in a small cycle or whatever. If you connect the dots to that, then I think it gets dangerous. It's like the process of trying to get better is what's important. You're not always going to. But yeah, I think that's super important to stay motivated and just keep enjoying the game.
So what would you connect your confidence to, and what's the reward of the process if you aren't making a new team, making more money, spiking harder?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it is like you can convince yourself that you did everything you could. So if I make it to a better team or not, I'm gonna be way more okay with that if I work my ass off for the whole year than if like I didn't do enough and I didn't get to that team. Um, so like trying to, and it's kind of the wrong way to think about it, is like to prevent regrets. Um, but like if you try your very hardest at something and it doesn't work out, like give me that all the time rather than having an idea that, oh, I could have done a little bit more to make that team or to get 5 more points or whatever.
So I guess the reward is like peace of mind almost.
Yeah, and then I mean this is another, I'll use your dichotomy word, is like, okay, is there ever enough? Like I go through that quite often. Like, okay, I could have spiked another ball, I could have served another ball in this long-term process in a season. So it is kind of balancing the two, like, okay, I don't have regrets. I worked super hard. There always could have been more. Like I could have worked harder this year. So if you're ever at a point where it's like, oh, I did everything I possibly could have, you're like, I don't think you're being very truthful on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Fair
with
enough.
everything. Like that's not just volleyball. Like you could have studied a little bit harder, could have slept a little bit better, could have ate better. And that's for everyone. Like that's for the guys who are super dialed into the world, like the very best in the world. I don't think they think that they did 100%. So it's kind of a balancing act, I think, kind of tough.
It's definitely tough. When you are trying to get those next contracts and you get them, and like you went from France to Turkey, and then you went from Germany to Poland and Poland to Turkey, like those are huge jumps to huge teams and leagues. How are you dealing with that pressure of being in a new environment that is significantly better than the one you were in before?
Yeah, that would have happened. That would have happened like a few times going to Turkey, and then going to Germany was kind of similar. Like going from Arcus to Berlin would have been kind of similar. Big jump like going to Poland for sure. Um, but not, I think it wasn't such a big jump because of like what we did on the national team. So like the
Mm.
guys we trained with in the national team, um, that's like just a very similar level to what I would have seen like going from Germany to Poland, those type of players. So it's not like I've never seen or played with or against those kind of guys, and then I just was thrown in. So I didn't really feel that so much just because of like who we had in the gym and the national team in Gatineau.
How do you deal with the pressure in a match or an important game?
Um, I don't know. Pressure is always there. Like it's the one thing we had a good sports psych, Kyle Paquette, um, and he often would talk about like realizing when you're feeling pressure or when you're nervous, and like you just can't trick your brain. And I'm like a full supporter of this. Like you can't tell yourself you're not nervous when you are. So like understanding and like realizing when you are nervous, I think lets that pass through your head way faster than trying to fake it. I'm gonna fake it by the way I look for sure. Like I'm not gonna try to change the way I'm acting in my demeanor. But if I can realize that I'm nervous, it'll leave my brain so much faster than trying to fake it, and it'll come back and fake it and come back.
Mm.
That's more for kind of pre-game stuff, I think. In game, um, I would often try to get back to like tactics would help me like distract my brain from being super nervous about the point. So like where am I trying to serve? What's coming across the net? Who is it? What's the blocking assignments versus who do we have blocking? That would kind of help me but get back to the process of things that mattered rather than being super like your brain just full of nerves and pressure.
What's your message? What is your message, or what will your message be to first years, like coming into the league, playing their first year against really polished teams?
Um, the message, I guess, is just kind of what we just talked about for the last 10 minutes about being super like process driven. Um, and then, this is where you can get to, but it takes and making them understand like what it takes to actually get there. That's a big one. Because it's not just like, okay, you're at this level and this fifth year is this good. Like the understanding that has to happen is like he got this good because of this. Like this is what he did. This is the time he spent, the effort and the focus that he had in the last 5 years. That's why he's at this level. Rather than just guys thinking they're on a train and it's like, okay, my second year I'll be this good, my third year I'll be this good, at my fifth year I'll be as good as this guy. Making them really understand what that takes. And then if it's for them or not, some guys, it's not for them to put that much effort in, and that's totally fine too. But having a goal and not aligning your processes to get that goal is it just won't happen. And that's really important to make guys understand. If that is your goal, great, but this is what it's going to take to get there.
And it's the law of diminishing returns too. The better you get, the harder it is to get better.
Yeah,
Your first year in the league, you probably make massive jumps. Then second year a little less, third year a little less, fourth year a little less. I think probably by the end of your career, the changes are so small. They can have still big impact, but a lot of work for a little change.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think yeah, you don't see like so many guys that are super late. Volleyball's later, I think, than a lot of sports for improvement because it is such a skill-based sport compared to some sports. I mean, I don't want people to watch this and think I'm bashing other sports, but every sport has skill. Certain ones have more or less, I think. So like volleyball, you can see guys getting better at late stages in their career for that reason that like their just touch is getting better. They've played longer. Um, it's not necessarily like the peak of your athleticism is your peak of your volleyball level, that's for sure, which is different for some sports. If you look at football, like lots of those certain positions, their peak is when they're at their athletic peak. They run the fastest, jump the highest. Yeah, it's more important for some sports, I think, than volleyball is.
Oh, that's a really good point. I remember we were talking about, or Ben, I think it was one year Ben was telling us he was giving us individual players to watch based on our skill type or whatever. And then he told the team, go watch Juan Torreina 8 years ago and then go watch Juan Torreina now. And it's completely different, but he's just as effective.
Yeah,
He's way lower, but he's incorporated the tips and the dumps and the pushes and the high lines and the recycles where his physical abilities 10 years ago, he was going OT everything and stuff like that. So I think it's a really, really cool point is that getting better is not just a physical thing.
yeah, it definitely helps. Like, but some of those skills just take a long time to get good at. So it if they match up, that's when that's ideal, but it doesn't really happen.
What was the highest high in your volleyball career?
Um, would probably be, I mean, going to the Olympics, like to Tokyo and Rio, but then also what we did at World League or Nations League when we got third in 20, I don't know when that was, 17 or 18,
In
I think.
Brazil,
Yeah,
that one? Yeah.
that was a big one. Um, yeah, but qualifying for the Olympics like that was massive. We haven't like the team hadn't been there for so long. Um, we had put in so much work, and then the thing that was special for me was like guys before us put in so much work that never saw success of going to the Olympics. So like without those guys, we wouldn't have been there because then we would have been like fighting to increase our ranking to the top 20 to have a chance to do it or whatever that was. Those guys grinded for years to give us the opportunity to try to compete and then like to be successful and qualify. There was a lot of good players that came through Canada that didn't have a chance to play at the Olympics, um, and kept going, like guys that stayed on the national team for so long and fought to help us and now help the current team too.
That's cool. Kind of goes back to what you're saying about the reward might not be external. Like for those guys that battled for years and years and years and then never got to be called an Olympian. What's the reward?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
hopefully there's some peace of mind there, but
there should be like in my mind, like making the Olympics or not, that doesn't define you. That's not that's not who you are as an athlete or person. And I know a lot of people like that is hard for some guys who spend their whole career trying and then they don't do it. They really put that as a failure rather than, I tried my ass off and just didn't work. Like sometimes the timing just doesn't work for certain guys.
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of randomness and luck with those sorts of things, especially. And even winning anything, winning a championship, so much has to go right at the same time. And what was the lowest point in your career?
Um, like how far back do I want to go here? Like what's
I don't know. Where was there like
um
a big lesson?
yeah, I'm trying to think of like I missed my serve national final for club, like 18U club, I think. So like I don't consider that my career yet.
But it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it did. It definitely mattered
Yeah.
at that time. Now, like I don't care and I tell people about it, whatever. It mattered when I was 18 and like I think we were down 4 or 5 points. So like small chance of coming back. But like my direct action lost the match. That's how I took it as an 18-year-old.
Hmm.
Um, so like I don't know if there was a lot of learning that happened right then. There was more learning happening like years later that I realized like, okay, that didn't matter at all.
Mhm.
I'm now playing on the university team. I'm on the B team, junior team. Um, there's nothing worse than missing your serve to lose in a final. And then I realized like, okay, that doesn't matter.
Mhm.
On to the next one.
Cool. Should we try Oog's rapid fire questions?
Yeah. And then I gotta run because I gotta go pick up this horse. What's your biggest volleyball pet peeve?
Um, maybe outside's being dirty on pipe when there's no block. So like I like did a great job of pulling the middle to commit and then free net and over the 3 meter line.
Okay.
That's rough.
Yeah, that's a good one. Who are your best friends on the Dinos back during your playing time?
Um, that's a tough question. There's a lot. Like that was an awesome group. Um,
Yeah, just don't say CJ though.
um, yeah, CJ. I just was hanging out with him yesterday. CJ, David Egan, AJ Halverson, Jace Richards. Um, yeah, there's a bunch of guys that kind of grew up with as well, like through high school and stuff.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's sweet. Who is someone that motivates you to be better every day?
Ooh, probably my wife and kids, because now like being better in life, like is for them and for us as a family. So like that's kind of where my inspiration comes from. Like seeing my kids play, like me being more successful in life helps them have a better life.
Yeah, that's cool. That's all I have. So I should go run and hook up the trailer and be out of here. But thanks for taking the time, Graham.
Yeah, of course. Thank
See
you
you,
guys.
boys.
Bye, Oog.
Sigu. Well, I want to talk about Oog's or your answer to Oog's question about your family and stuff. We had a couple listener questions about just like how you balance your personal life and your personal struggles being overseas. Well,
Yeah.
let me read the exact question. Did you have any struggles with balancing personal life and volleyball at any point? If so, how did the mental aspect of things affect both your volleyball and personal life? And what are some things you did in order to get back on track?
Oof, that's a deep question. Um, one thing I realized at some point in pro was that I needed to have some more stuff in my life. So it wasn't just I'm not just a volleyball player in pro that has so much time off and doesn't do anything. So the years I took some classes when I was overseas during certain pro seasons and I just felt better. Just felt like my brain was more stimulated and I wasn't I think it helped like my volleyball as well, just having more stuff around. I think there's a happy medium there. It's not like you have so much going on that things are super stressful, but also like as a pro, you've got a lot of time to do stuff. So if you're just sitting and watching TV and doing that, like I always felt better when I had some more stuff going on.
Yeah, it's cool.
Again, kids helped with that. Like you can't just sit around all day when you have kids. Like you're out playing and you're at a playground and I felt better like mentally and physically as an athlete because I wasn't just sitting around.
Yeah. Well, and recovery's always been a big part of your persona, I guess, correct?
Yeah, ish.
No,
Like
ish.
recover enough. I mean, I think that was kind of the case. I was never super dialed into recovery as an athlete. Like later in my career, I was better at it, and
Mhm.
again, more like curious about like what things I can do to help my body. Um, yeah, I think there's some cool stuff now that even I'm doing um that I'm not an athlete that are trying to like improve my sleep and stuff like that. So
Mm.
like
So the
sauna and ice bath. Like I haven't filled up my ice bath for a while, but that kind of stuff I think is not just helpful for your body, but like a huge part of the reason I like sauna and ice bath is like for your brain. Um, it's quite meditative for me because you're like just trying to survive, and you jump
Mhm.
in an ice cold water. Like there's no other thoughts in your brain other than like I'm
Get
gonna
out.
die, gonna die. If
Yeah.
I'm in here for another couple minutes, like I'm not gonna get out. That's the only thing that goes through my head is like this is terrible, terrible, terrible. So like nothing else is happening in my brain. So I think that's quite meditative. I
Mm.
never had very much success with meditation where it was like try to clear your brain, don't think about anything,
Yeah.
and it's a skill. So like for sure if I put more work into it, I would get better at it. So on an ice bath, you're just like trying to survive. So your body like doesn't let you think about other things. So
That's
I
cool.
really enjoy that stuff.
The your Just Ice brand, is it Just Ice or Justice?
It was just ice, not the best branding. I'm gonna agree.
Was that purely like a business venture because you had to fill your time? Or was that because you truly believed in icing and you wanted to like spread the word of ice, basically?
I was icing. This happened in FTC, so I was icing my shoulder um, after each practice because I had some shoulder stuff going on, and the options were like plastic bag with saran wrap around your arm, or to buy like a hyper ice one, which was like super expensive, or I could buy one that I kind of started selling, but it was from the States and there was like $100 in shipping and duty. So I
Mm.
just saw like a gap in Canada that no one was really selling it at that time. Because they're super cheap. Like it shouldn't cost you that much money. It cost me like $150 for a very poorly made product. So I thought someone in Canada can do this and sell it. Um, so yeah, I went through like a few different suppliers in China. Um, this was during FTC and like sent the product over there. They sent it back. There was like a bunch of different, took a while. Like I didn't know what I was doing. Like I was learning it as I was going, which was fun. Like it was fun just like trying to communicate with someone from China about a product I wanted. And then like hoping that they were going to send it after I like sent my money. I don't think we did it in like escrow, which is like a company where they like hold the money until both parties
Yeah.
fulfill whatever they're supposed to do. I don't think I did it the first time. I think it was just like here's $1,000 or whatever, and like, I didn't have a lot of money at that time, but it worked out. And like yeah, I made a few different orders. Never made a ton of money. I have like 8 boxes in my garage right now, just full of ice bags. So if anybody wants to make a wholesale order, let me know.
That's funny. We could put a little ad out for you on our Instagram.
No, please don't. I don't
For
actually want people to
Justice?
order. No,
Yeah.
it's not worth the time right now. I I could have done more with it, but it would have taken like more effort, and I was never at a point where like I wanted to really dive into it, and like wasn't something I would have made a ton of money with.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was cool to kind of learn that process of importing stuff, business license, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's cool. Um, what was that time period like where you retired for the first time?
Yeah, I retired or I stopped playing after we were in Ankara. Um, we were in Turkey with like a brand new baby and a just under 2 year old at that time. So like things were crazy. That was a big reason why we came back to Canada and thought we were gonna just stop playing. I was gonna be done. Came home, got a job at a tech company, like a fintech company in Calgary called Neo. Um, and like loved it. Loved the people I worked with. Was really cool. Like the responsibilities I had, which I had, I talk about not knowing how to coach or like, I'm on the process of learning that. I had zero idea what I was doing in an office. Like first job I've ever had. Um, Googling Excel, like how to do Excel and formulas for Excel, like every day, and like hoping that nobody important was like walking behind me looking at my screen to see like what I was Googling. Um, but it was really cool. Like I learned a ton in that year from that has kept with me and has helped me here in this job too. Um, and then what happened? A buddy from Argentina messaged me, just said, "Hey, do you want to play again?" And I was like, "No, I haven't worked out. Like I've worked out 3 times in a year, and like there's my shoulder hurts, my back hurts. There's no way I want to play again." And then he told me where it was. It was in the Canary Islands. So like it's like the Hawaii of Europe. Um, and like quick Google search, I've heard of it before, but like quick Google search to see what it looked like. And I was like, uh-oh, my wife is definitely gonna want to go here. Because I was like, okay, it would be fun, but it's gonna suck. Like it's gonna be hard to get back in shape. It's gonna hurt. Like it's gonna be quite a few months of not a lot of fun. But I knew like I really knew she wanted to. So like I brought it up to her and like instantly I'm like, yeah, we're going.
Hmm.
Which I'm really glad that we did. Like it was an awesome year with the Bulls there too. They were older, so it was much more manageable. It was way easier. Um, they were in like daycare. Our oldest was in Spanish public school, which was really cool. Like he started speaking Spanish at the end of it. Um, so yeah, I was super happy to go back. And then we were tempted to stay there or find another contract. And then this came up as well. So
Hmm. That's interesting. That is not the story that I had heard, and
oh
also
yeah,
not the story that I would have imagined. In my mind, it was like you retired and then you hated your new corporate job and then you wanted to go play again and just worked out that it was this amazing place. But
there were things about the corporate job I hated.
okay.
There's that's I mean, if you heard that part, that's for sure. But there were parts of it that I like really enjoyed. The parts I liked was like trying like learning something I had nothing like no idea, no business doing. Like I was having conversations with people where I felt like you are way better at this than I am. Like we shouldn't be having a conversation with other like businesses. Um, but that was the cool thing about being in a startup. Like you don't get that if you go to a big company. Um, you don't get that responsibility.
Hmm.
I think no matter when you do retire, you're always gonna miss it. Like it doesn't matter if you retire early where you could have kept playing. Like that's, a lot of people have said that to me. Like, why did you stop? You could have kept going. Things were going well. I think you miss it then. I think you also miss it if you go as long as you can and you're stopped by injury. Um, I don't know if that necessarily prevents you from missing the game. Like I think if you did love it, you're gonna miss it no matter when you do retire.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we've been asking this to most of the guests that have come on recently, and there's always a price tag to people's success that you won't see from an outsider's perspective most of the time. So I'm wondering what are some of the biggest sacrifices you've made to play volleyball for as long as you did at the highest level, And it could even be some sacrifices that other people have made for you so you could play for so long at the highest level.
Yeah. Um, I mean, being overseas, you miss a lot. Like you guys are aware of that lifestyle. You miss your buddies' weddings, you miss your family, you miss important events if it's family being born or things like that. Like that's a big sacrifice. My wife sacrificed a ton. Like we were overseas and she was with me every year. Um, so like that like affected her career for sure doing that. But we also had an amazing time. I don't think she regrets it, but it was like for sure her career had some sacrifice because of our lifestyle and what we did overseas.
Okay, here's a piece that I actually don't know the answer to. Do you think it's a sacrifice or a massive opportunity to have your kids growing up in a different country every or around the world every year?
Massive opportunity for me. Like it's huge. I think it's not just good for them, like for the kids, but I think it's good for parents to have like to raise kids in different countries and different experiences. It makes you really realize like how great we have it here, but also um I think I feel more calm as a parent back in Canada because of the stress we went through with traveling and raising kids in a different country. Um, like it's not easy to have kids in Turkey and find a doctor when they're sick or go to the pharmacy and not speak Turkish. And there's a lot of barriers and a lot of challenges to do that, which makes which makes you, I think, understand that when you're back home, that small things that happen aren't wild, crazy, overblown things that make you freak out. Like I see parents all the time going through airports and they're just like ripping their hair out and freaking out, like unloading, unload that stressful time of going through security with kids. Like you guys have seen people in Canada and like anywhere in the world, and like ripping out all the liquids and like the kids running around and they've got to go through security, but their toys have to stay in the stroller like that. That is stressful. But like going through that stressful stuff overseas, I think makes you realize, okay, it's just going to take a little bit longer, and like it's not as big of a deal as you make it. And I do this. It still happens to me too. Like you overblow certain situations that shouldn't be as stressful, but they just get there. So I think it's huge for kids and for parents raising the kids too.
Yeah, that's cool. Especially at that age, you pick up so much. So, like you're saying, your son was speaking Spanish by the end of the year, which is crazy
Yeah, it
and
was eight
super
months.
valuable. Yeah.
It was 8 months of like zero Spanish, didn't say a word. And like, okay, hard to tell. Like, does he like school? Does he have any friends? How do they communicate? And then like the last 2 months, um, we were outside school one day, like I picked him up and he was talking to his buddy about like the color of our car in Spanish. And I know enough Spanish to like understand what he was saying, but I was just like, what happened? Like, do you know what you're talking about right now? So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was an awesome moment for me. Which like, okay, learning Spanish is great, like the knowledge of the language is cool. But I think learning a language, like the value for kids is much more about what it does like for their brain and their development rather than actually the knowledge of having another language. Like that's for me, that's like an extra. That's a plus. But
Well,
like for your brain is huge.
and just like them realizing that people are different. There's different people in the world and there's different cultures and there's different perspectives and backgrounds and stuff. And like them understanding that from a young age, I think is really cool. I think
Yeah,
that's
and
super
that's
cool.
and that's like they would have been more affected by that if we played like if I played longer and they were older.
Right.
But I think they got some of it. It would have been even better if we were still over there, or if I was playing for another 5 years and they were like 10 and going through different countries like that. But yeah, I think traveling for kids and young adults is huge if you're able to, for that reason that you can understand that different people and other cultures it makes you realize like we're all the same. Like there's not a big difference between people in the world. Um, versus someone who doesn't travel, like, they may have a different outlook on how things go in a different country, which could be totally wrong because of their information is from the news or what they Google or whatever. But yeah, I think that's huge.
Cool.
Solly often brings up, like, he asks if we're in Canada again, like if we go out to the mountains. And then we drive back to Calgary. He's like, "Are we back in Canada again? Like, is this Canada?" So, like, kids have no understanding of what a city or a country or continent is, but
Right.
just funny, like, he asks those questions that, like, he understands a little bit of some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, last question here. If you were to give yourself some advice when you were, let's say, going up through the club system, about to head into university, what would you tell yourself?
Um, I would have probably played basketball longer. Um, or tried to play a little more sports, like other sports in high school. Grade 11, I was pretty like focused in volleyball because I was worried about like scholarships and getting a university team. Um, but I think I would have tried to do like a little bit more other sports, not because I like them more, but just like I think it would have helped. I think it helps your volleyball career as well. And then like to watch more volleyball. I didn't watch very much back then. Like it wasn't on TV or on YouTube like it is now. Um, I think that's huge. I was lucky. I was lucky because I had family that was really into volleyball, like with the Saxtons. So they understood like the value of skills and beach and stuff. Um, but I think I would have done even more of that stuff, like more beach, more skill stuff, different positions. Um, yeah, skill is it's a long burn. It's super important.
Good, Jess?
Dude, out of something happened. Everything was all delayed and jumbled.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
delayed
know.
on my own screen. Well, does it sound okay?
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, cool.
What
That'll work.
what are you guys doing for Thanksgiving? Jesse, are you cooking a turkey?
No, I called my parents right before this, and they're like, "What are you doing for Thanksgiving?" I was like, well, "I don't know. When's that?" Like tomorrow. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
no idea, no idea."
No.
So no, maybe we'll go for dinner.
Yeah. That was something cool that like when we played with I played with Shoji, like an American guy,
Yeah,
and like he would kind of bring some of those American traditions to like some of the European guys, which was kind of cool.
yeah,
Like we watched the Super Bowl, I think, and had like the typical American Super Bowl kind of thing. And I don't know if we made a turkey one year or whatever but that was always cool, like trying to bring like our culture or things that we do in Canada to like guys in Europe. Because like you're really just like thrown in and you're living the French life and you know everything about France. I always
yeah,
thought it
yeah,
was cool to like see if guys were interested to do some of that stuff, like come over and have a turkey that they've never seen a huge turkey cooked
yeah,
like this before.
yeah. I didn't even think about that. That you don't like, you don't even think about that because that's such a normal October thing.
Yeah, but like unless someone was doing it, we didn't really do it either overseas, especially like our first while. But
Mm.
Yeah,
it's cool to keep some of that stuff and see like because I always enjoyed like seeing foreigners' culture like when I was overseas. So if like we were invited to a wedding or something or over at like a holiday dinner or something, I thought that was really cool. So I think it's cool to do it the other way too.
yeah, yeah. Well, the Brazilians hosted a big barbecue in
Nice.
preseason. It was so fun and so
Yeah.
tasty. Like they were like, yeah, that's what we do. Like Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday barbecue. Like bring your own
Those
chairs, you eat, you talk, you laugh. Like it was
tho-
incredible.
those countries have got barbecue right.
Yeah,
Brazil and Argentina, like we had the same. We had like 3 or 4 guys from Argentina on the team in Spain. And just like it's a lifestyle, these guys. It's amazing.
yeah. That and their mate.
Yeah,
They love that stuff.
yeah, yeah. That's funny stuff. We were in Argentina the first time, and I saw that, and I was like, people smoking? Like it looks like a
That's what
little like.
I
It's like
thought
what's
the
going
same
on?
thing in a team meeting. I'm like, what is going on? Like,
I got one more question.
Yeah.
Pit to pro, like pit as in like you're at the very bottom. Is that what we're talking like a pit?
No, it's a good question. Actually, we should probably revisit that. We've gained a lot of listeners
yeah, it's true.
since we talked about that. The pit is what we call the basement of our house.
Okay.
So it's like pretty dark down there, decent sized room, and my dad put chicken wire on the windows and protection on the lights and like curtains on all the walls so we could just play any sport we wanted down there at full velocity. We're just
Sick.
hammering soccer balls off the wall, playing football, full contact. And we played a ton of volleyball down there. So that's what I
That's
was talking
awesome.
about with like the touches off court. So yeah, I might have spent more hours playing in my basement than on court until like U17, 18. Um, so that's
That's
the
awesome.
pit.
The
And then
pit.
now we've touched the pro level, so
Yeah, cool.
call it the Pit to Pro podcast.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Have a good weekend, guys.
Yeah, thanks
Sounds
a lot
good.
for coming on.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Thanks
course.
everyone for listening. Signing off.